Hey everyone, it's Lynette and welcome to Strikebackvideoathon Day 3. Today's prompt is, what are your favorite fantasy reads? I have several, and some of these I know everybody has read, but I'm going to mention them anyway because they're sort of what got me started into the whole fantasy genre. So here we go. The first book, of course, is Harry Potter. That's like the OG fantasy book for me. It's what got me started into this world of magic and fantastical elements. So I don't even think I need to explain what Harry Potter is about. I think most people have either read the books or seen the movies, so you have a premise of what Harry Potter is about. But if you have not read Harry Potter, then what in the world are you waiting for? It came out so many years ago now. I was in the 5th grade when I read the first one, and I just feel like I have grown up with Harry. Harry was like my best friend. His friends were my friends. I felt like I went to Hogwarts. His professors were my professors. So I will forever love Harry. If you haven't read Harry Potter, you need to. It is just like classic literature now. Like everybody just has to read this book. My next fantasy reads, no surprise again, anything by Sarah J. Maas, A Court of Thorns and Roses series and the Throne of Glass series. I love them both equally. That's all I'm going to say about them because I talk about them way too much on my channel. The next fantasy book that I want to talk about is Three Dark Crowns by Kendar Blake and One Dark Throne. This was such a dark fantasy. I've talked about it before. 3 queens, all sisters, trying to kill each other. The one that survives in the end will be queen. It's told through the point of view of all 3 sisters, so all throughout the book, you don't know which ones you want to die. You don't know which one you like the most. By the end of the book, you know, you just are totally confused about who you like the most. But it's a great, great story. I cannot wait for the conclusion of it to come out. If you have not read Three Dark Crowns and One Dark Throne, be sure to pick them up before the next one comes out. The next fantasy series I really like is kind of similar to Three Dark Crowns, and that is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I've read half of Glass Sword. I put it down like this past fall and I haven't picked it back up yet, but I do want to finish this series. I really, really enjoyed Red Queen. The twists and turns that Red Queen took you on was just incredible. I literally gasped in some places. It surprised me so much. But again, it's, you know, kingdoms and queens and people have powers. So again, it's a very similar kind of feel to Three Dark Crowns. So if you want a book that's similar to that, then make sure you pick up Red Queen. And then there's Glass Sword. And I think the next one's King's something. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of them out. There's some novellas out, there's the original series out, and it's not finished yet. So I recommend that one for sure, especially if you liked to read Three Dark Crowns. The next fantasy series that I want to talk about really surprised me that I liked it, and I picked it up because the covers are just gorgeous. They're some of my all-time favorite covers, and I'm so mad that I don't own these books yet. I don't know what I'm waiting on. I need to buy these books because they are just so pretty. But that is The 1000th Floor, and then the second one is The Dazzling Heights. This is such a fun read. It takes place in a futuristic Manhattan where pretty much everybody lives in this big 1000-floor tower, and it's bigger than anything that you can imagine. I mean, it's like whole city blocks in this tower, and the closer you get to the top, you know, of course, the smaller the tower gets, but the more you get to the top, the richer the people are. And this is about the people who live at the tippy top on the 1000th floor, and, you know, everybody in between. But the bottom floors are bigger because they have more people, and there's more, you know, poor people and poverty down at the bottom floors. But it revolves around 5 teens. There's this murder, somebody dies, you're trying to figure out. You don't know who dies. It's one of the people that you are kind of hearing the story about. So you're kind of guessing throughout the book who this person is, how they died, why they died, and who killed them. But it's such a fun read. It's sort of like Pretty Little Liars and Gossip Girl that takes place in the future, but there's all of this sci-fi fantasy worldliness in it, so it just makes it just a really great story. They're really fast reads. I thought I went through them in no time at all, so if you're looking for something quick to round out your January month with, then I recommend that you pick this series up. Another one of my favorite fantasy series, I guess it could be fantasy. It's kind of horror too. It's kind of scary. Anyway, the next one is the Gone series by Michael Grant. Again, kind of an older young adult series. I think the first one came out in like the early 2000s, but it's a great series. He is actually bringing it back, kind of like a kind of revival of the series. The book Monster came out this past fall, which takes place 3 years after the events of the Gone series. So you kind of have to read the Gone series before you read this new series. But I think Monster is going to be a trilogy. There's going to be Monster, Villain, and then Hero. Villain, I think, comes out this fall. So if you haven't read Monster, make sure you do so you can be ready for the second one to come out. But the Gone series is so cool. It takes place, it's sort of like Stephen King Under the Dome. It takes place, there's this town, all of the adults vanish. It's just everybody under 15 remains. Some of the kids under the dome start to develop these powers. Some of them use the powers for good and for helping the other people, and some, you know, obviously for evil and for bad. But so much crap happens to them in the phase, which is what they call it, the Fallout Alley Youth Zone. Fallout Alley, yeah, something like that, the phase. But so much stuff happens to them. There's famine, there's hunger, there's a plague, there's this monster that's walking around that they have to kind of defeat. Anyway, so much stuff happens. All of these books are just jam-packed with action. They are a little bit of a heftier read, so it will probably take you some time to get through them, but I guarantee, I mean, they are very fast-paced. There's a lot of action, a lot of detail. Michael Grant is just a phenomenal writer. He's one of my favorites. So if you haven't checked out the Gone series, make sure that you do so. And if you have read the Gone series, make sure you check out Monster. Just for funsies, I will put on this list as well the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings nerd, like bad. Like anytime those movies are on TV, I know my entire day is gone. I will sit there, I will watch all 3 of them from beginning to end, and now that, you know, they made The Hobbit into a 3-part movie, I will sit there and watch The Hobbit, all 3 parts as well. So I just love this book. I love the world. I love how well thought out it is. It's just fantasy gold is what it is. I had to read The Hobbit in school. I feel like I had to read it in like the 8th grade, and I was so bummed that they picked this book. I don't know why. I didn't think I was gonna like it at all. And then when I got into it and started reading it, it was just such a fun journey, such a fun story. So I had to read the other 3 as well. I just love it. I love everything about the Lord of the Rings. So that deserves to be on this list, I think. Of course, no fantasy list would be complete without mentioning Game of Thrones. I started watching the TV show first, and a few of my friends were really into the TV show, and a few of them read the books, but not many, because the books are huge. It took me months. I'm not even kidding. It took me months to get through the first one. And I'm a pretty quick reader. I can get through books pretty quickly, but it took me a long time to read that one. It's just so detailed, and it's really heavy, to be honest. It's not a bad thing. It's really heavy, really dark. I mean, if you've seen the TV show, you know pretty much everyone and anyone dies. Don't get used to anybody in the TV show because they're probably going to be dead in a couple episodes. But the books are the same way, even more so. I mean, just like take the TV show and how complicated and complex it is and amplify it by 1,000, and that's what you have with the book. The first book came out in the 90s, and I didn't read it back then. I actually, like I said, I started a TV show first, and then I read the first book, so it's relatively new to me. But I feel bad for people who started reading it 20 years ago because they have been waiting so long for some of these answers. So I really think Game of Thrones fans that have been fans since the beginning, you are the most patient people on the face of the planet, because when I'm watching the TV show, I cannot stand the suspense. I have to look things up. I have to ask questions to my friends who have read the books already. I cannot take waiting for answers in this series. And one other book I wanted to mention that I am currently reading right now, but I am absolutely loving. It's an urban fantasy book, and it's called We Own the Sky by Sarah Crawford. I really, really like this book. It's about Greek muses and how they influence people in the arts, like music and painting and poetry and writing and things like that. And I love that it's an urban fantasy. It takes place in the real world that has fantastical elements. It's really, really good so far. I'm about halfway through it. Haven't read that and you really like the genre of urban fantasy, I highly recommend that you check that one out. So that is all for my favorite fantasy reads. I thank you for watching my Strike Back Videoathon Day 3, and I will see you tomorrow for Day 4. Bye guys.